All right. Hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Talkin Investing. You're here with Tom and you're here with George.
Hey, guys.
And once again, we got some good news and we got some bad news. The Bitcoin's on fire, although it pulled back today. We did hit a new all-time high this week. We took out our old all-time high pretty nicely. So for Bitcoin, this was a really good week. We're going to talk about where I think it's going, where George thinks it's going, where you guys think it's going. The Bitcoin miners, however, were frustrating, particularly yesterday and today. The Bitcoin miners were red across the board today, but Bitcoin was down today. It was yesterday where Bitcoin hit a new all-time high, and a lot of the miners were down yesterday. Yesterday was a very, very bad day, and it's the kind of day that has Bitcoin investors questioning what's going on here, and is this ever going to turn around? So I'm sure some of you are feeling that way. We're going to talk about it and see what's what. If you guys could do us a big favor and smash the like button, it helps the stream a lot in real time, and we'll see. This is going to be a telltale stream today. Have people given up on the Bitcoin miners? Robert Anderson saying Cleanspark's just getting held down. Right. Cleanspark behaved very poorly this week. And I will tell you, I'm going to get into a conversation on Bitfarms. I'm going to get into a conversation on Cleanspark. I'm sure we'll talk about some others. I think that I really like what Cleanspark's doing. I like their balance sheet. I like their income statement. I like their, their compensation to management that people, that's one of the things people complain about. They've got that in line. Their stock dilution, they're doing no stock dilution. Their mining efficiency is incredible. They keep growing their fleet, and their stock did take a nice run, but this week it behaved poorly. So year to date, it's actually the best performing Bitcoin miner, and it's not performing very well. When we look at the year to date chart, you're going to see being the best, it's the best of the worst. So that's not saying much, but I like what they're doing. And there's other companies that I like what they're doing. But we're going to talk about some other companies where, for me personally, I don't like what they're doing. And a lot of companies, there's a shift going on in the Bitcoin mining industry. A lot of these Bitcoin miners, I believe, feel that the label of Bitcoin miner is toxic, and they are trying to rebrand themselves away from Bitcoin mining, even some of them that are going to continue to mine Bitcoin and rebrand themselves as high performance computing / AI / energy plays. So, that to me, we'll see what happens. And we're going to talk about one big thing that I think will make all of these stocks take off, and it hasn't happened yet. And I don't know when or if it's going to happen. But it's holding, I think it's the number one thing. We talked about this on the members only stream on Tuesday. I think it's the number one thing holding all the Bitcoin mining stocks back. I don't really think it's their performance. We did hit a new all-time high. What are you thinking, George?
I think it's just the calm before a storm. And I don't mean a bad storm either. I think a good storm. I think we might, have a little bit of a pullback. The bears are going to try to get us back below 100. And then I think it's going to get real interesting. And I think we're going to, take out all-time highs every single day here coming up in the month of June.
I'm going to do a quick poll.
Isn't that a crazy one? So we're going to go, oh my God, we got the 113. Oh my God, we got the 114. Oh my God, we got the 115.
It's funny. Our new all-time high, and I'm looking at the TradingView Bitcoin Coinbase chart. It got to exactly we got to $112,000.00. And by the way, the 15-minute candle before that, if I look here, you probably can't see this. The numbers are so small. The 15-minute candle before that got to $111,999. And then the next candle got $1 higher to exactly $112,000. and that's our new Bitcoin all-time high. And that is a nice jump from we were at 109. So, we took out the all-time high by about 2.5% this week. To me, this is the area, we've been talking, let me post this poll first. Is Bitcoin going to hit 120,000 by the end of May? Remember, we just got to 112, but also remember, we only got a week left in May. So is it going to have a big up week next week and get there? It's a tough call.
I'm beginning to worry about this alt season, though.
So, yes, that should be our next poll. What are people feeling about alt season?
I mean, Bitcoin is just such a dominant. If you look at the Bitcoin dominance in crypto, it's just wow.
Let's go to that because it has remained. We're still gaining momentum on the Bitcoin dominance. Let's just go. Let's just take a look. Where do I have that? So you can see this is the 1-day chart, and it's back on the move. And if we zoom, I'm gonna go to the 1-week chart because it's easier to see. Here we'll go to the 3-day chart. Like this bottomed out in September of 2022. It almost double bottomed here around the FTX time in November of 2022. This was under 40%. This got up over, maybe a few weeks ago. This got over 65%. And I believe this includes the fact that the stable coins are at an astronomical all-time high. So that eats into this. So I don't have this chart ready. I'll find it for next time. But the Bitcoin plus stablecoin dominance is absurd. The altcoins are just, a small fraction. And that's after Ethereum just took a gigantic leap over the last couple of weeks. But it still leaves them, just a little over half of where they were in the last bull market. So, Ethereum's not there. Solana's in a good place. XRP's in a good place. There's a few coins that, seem to be holding on, but I don't know. I see what George is seeing with Bitcoin dominance. It hit an all-time high a few weeks ago, I guess. And, it's marching its way back up there. So a lot of people thought, like that was the end, like that was the top, and we would see the altcoins start to kick in, but that has not happened. Instead, we see Bitcoin at a new all-time high. And the Bitcoin adoption, I do have a big question about the altcoins going forward. I've went to the point where I do not think I'm going to invest other than maybe one or two of the very big ones that have a real thesis for why they're going to be useful going forward and valuable. I'm worried about all of these coins. And maybe I'm totally wrong because I do understand this is exactly where they want me. On the altcoins, they got me exactly where they want me. I'm totally terrified to move in on the altcoins right now. And maybe 8 months from now, I'm going to look back and go, yep, I was dead wrong. We had our altcoin season just like we always do, and I missed it. So I don't know. Minor Deegan, thanks for being a member. Thanks for the super chat. Minor Deegan said, Tom, what Bitcoin treasury company would you consider owning that's not a miner? Well, I'll go through this. I just within the last month, I got rid of MicroStrategy. And I want to track that trade and just follow it along with everybody. I'm up I'm up a lot on that trade right now. Now, I'm not really up anything. It's all on paper. I very rarely sell. So I had a sell call in at break even for MicroStrategy. I had dollar cost averaged in, and I just over time, I just was not feeling. And I have an article that we're going to go through today to talk about MicroStrategy. And I'm not bashing MicroStrategy. I just looked at a few other stocks, two in particular. I bought 3 other stocks, but 2 were the majority of the purchase, and it was Hive and Iron. And Iron's up like 50% since the day I made that trade, which was April 23rd. It's now, that's exactly 1 month ago. It's now May 23rd. So I'm going to track that trade, but right now, the money I moved out, MicroStrategy's up 7%, and those stocks on the average are up 27%. So far, that's a good trade, but we're 1 month in. It's way too early to judge that. But I don't have the same level of conviction in MicroStrategy, and I'll go through and tell you why. There's an article that just came out that goes right to my fears, and they compare it to something that was publicly traded in the past that took a similar journey and turned upside down. So I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just worried about it. So I don't know. I would rather buy Bitcoin than buy a company that's engaging in Bitcoin treasury. And I have a bunch of examples up. There are companies now starting to do this, and they're not the monsters, right? They're small companies who are effectively, mini MicroStrategies or strategies now that, very soon their regular business, if they continue on this trajectory, their regular business is going to be immaterial. They're just going to be a proxy on Bitcoin, which is what MicroStrategy did. Of the $100 billion MicroStrategy's worth, like $1 billion of it is their core underlying business, which is where their market cap hovered for a decade before they started this. And MicroStrategy has been a great play. I guess I'll always call them MicroStrategy. They're strategy now. It just sounds confusing when you're saying that in a sentence. And I know a lot of people made a lot of money. And right now, from the bottom of the crypto winter until now, MicroStrategy's been the best play. So far, it's the winner. I'm just worried that from this moment forward, the opposite's going to be true, potentially. Or there's more risk of that, in my opinion. Like Metaplanet today, just crashed. So we talked about this with members on Tuesday. They bought, let me see if I have the article. Just 10 seconds here. Okay, Metaplanet buys another 1,004 Bitcoin. This was on May 19th. This is this week. Their stock was up like 44% or some outrageous thing. They now hold $800 million worth of Bitcoin. So they just bought over 1,000 in one chunk. They now have 7,800 Bitcoin. They're closing in, 3 to 6 months from now, they could have as much Bitcoin as, say, like Hut or CleanSpark, right, which are in the top 5 holders of Bitcoin of any publicly traded company. There aren't that many companies that hold this much Bitcoin, so there's not a lot of options here. But this company got wrecked today. Now, it went ballistic yesterday and it got wrecked today, so you're probably still up if you held it through the whole thing. But I just worry, and this is another company that, to me, really, they're just going to be a Bitcoin proxy. And then there's another one doing the same thing. Let me see if I saved that or not. I'm not seeing it right now. If I find it later, I'll bring it up. But there's a few companies, and they I think have accumulated like 4,000 Bitcoin. So, the companies are just starting to do this. What I'm waiting for is what George asked last time, which was, when's a real, no offense to these other companies, when's a major player going to start buying Bitcoin? And there's two levels of that. You know, there's a lot of large cap companies, between 100 billion and $1 trillion. If those companies start to move in, I think you're going to see an avalanche. But beyond that, there's 7 or 8 companies that are between $1 trillion and $3 trillion. That, I'm going to go to the list because another thing just happened on this list that I think is interesting, and it's inevitable. It was inevitable. Let me see if I can find it. Come on. All right, give me 30 seconds because I don't know why it's not on my screen, but this is one I did intend to take a look at. I'm just going to go pull it up. Okay, so two things to report here. Number one, Bitcoin just passed Google or Alphabet in total market cap, and Bitcoin just passed Amazon in total market cap. It is now the 5th largest market cap of any asset on Earth, gold being by far, and gold has gone on a tear, as you guys know. Gold is now $22 trillion market cap in total. So commodity. So that's the only commodity. And it used to be silver was always the 2nd largest commodity. That's just under $2 trillion. But the fact is, Bitcoin's past silver, it's past Google, it's past Amazon. Now it's going to take a minute, but I believe in this run we're in this year, it's going to pass Apple, NVIDIA, and Microsoft. And you're going to have gold at 1 and Bitcoin at 2. So let's see. So this poll was almost a 50-50. Will Bitcoin hit 120 by the end of May, which is really the end of next week? 52% said yes. 48% said no. Thank you for voting if you voted. And if you just joined us, or if you have not yet, hit the like button, the thumbs up button. It helps us stream out a lot in real time. And like I said, we got a lot to talk about. There was good news this week. There was bad news this week. Let's end this poll. I want to get another one. All right, so that's a little bit of a mouthful, but let's get this one up. Will Bitcoin pass the big 3, which is Apple, NVIDIA, and Microsoft, to become the 2nd largest asset by the end of 2025, this year, this bull run, and more so than this bull run, this year? Are we going to finally pass? We just jumped both of these like this week. So we just jumped up to number 5. I'm saying we. Bitcoin just jumped up to number 5. And all that's left are these, Apple had a bad day. It just went under 3 trillion. Apple, for the most part, the last few years, Apple has held the number 1 spot on this list, excluding gold. So if I go, just to companies, not countries and commodities, it's been Apple at number 1 and Microsoft at number 2. NVIDIA popped into first place for like 1 or 2 days. Microsoft is back into first place, and they've been in first place on and off for the last 20 plus years. So they've been there. And Apple for the last 10 plus years. So, you know, those Apple and Microsoft were just bigger than everyone else by far. And then the NVIDIA thing happened over the last 18 months, and all of a sudden they're the same size. Well, Apple traded down today on some tariff talk that we'll talk about. And so it's now below NVIDIA. The tariff stuff is going to keep raising its ugly head. And some days it's going to be good for the market, and some days it's going to be bad. That's a brand new piece of volatility they can hammer us with out of left field whenever they want. So this new poll is, will Bitcoin pass the big three, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Apple? So essentially, are they going to get, they just passed $2 trillion in market cap. Are they going to get to $3.5 trillion or $4 trillion in market cap? $4 trillion would be a double from here. That would get them over 200,000. But they really just have to get to about 3.5 trillion. How you feeling, George? Somebody said you look miserable.
Oh, I just woke up, so I'm actually great.
Good.
I'm just frustrated, but it's programming stuff.
George looks very stressed. Well, programming will do that to you. So George has been programming for a month now.
Coding hardcore code, babe.
Which is, in my opinion, not fun. Let's go back to the 15-minute. So we're hanging around at around 108.5. So we're backed off from our high of the day yesterday. We closed yesterday. So yesterday, and we set this record 3 or 4 times in the last week, was the highest daily candle close of Bitcoin ever. And where was we'll go to the 1 day to look at that close. So you can see, like, here we set the record. On Sunday, we had the highest Bitcoin close. What was that? Yep, that was. So this Sunday, we had the highest daily candle close for Bitcoin in history. We then broke that on Tuesday. We broke it again on Wednesday, and we broke it again yesterday on Thursday to hit a new all-time high of $112,000. So Bitcoin is on a run, and we talked about this several times. This felt like consolidation that was going to take a move up once it broke. And that's what happened. And, you know, not everything always plays out according to technical analysis, but there was a bunch of reasons why this seemed like the most likely case scenario. There is no sure thing. But so we got what we wanted out of Bitcoin. But, you know, look, we got Marathon today down 5.8%. Bitcoin was down 2.2%. Bitcoin last Friday, to put this in perspective, let's get out of there and zoom in a little bit. It happened to be right on top of one of my lines of support and resistance, but you'll see this number over here is $104,069. So a week ago, that's where we closed. So the last time we had a live stream, we were talking about Bitcoin at 104,000. We closed yesterday. We hit 112,000. We closed yesterday at 111,000. And the Bitcoin miners did next to nothing on that giant move up this week. Now, yeah, we pulled back a little bit today. But, you know, Marathon down almost 6%. Riot down 4%. Cleanspark down 5%. Iron did okay, and Iron was the best performer this week. Next, we will look at what everybody did this week and this month, because I think it paints a very interesting picture, and it's worth looking at. Iron is doing very well. Core Scientific was down just a little. So some of these guys were down just a little. BitDeer down 4. Wolf almost 4. Bitfarms 3.5. I have Canaan and Griffin on here, but these are not the same. And I still have Bit Digital on the side, but I'm taking these out of my numbers. And these two are micro cap, nano cap type stocks. But as many of you may know, Griffin is going to be, I'll call it, merging with Hut 8's subsidiary. Hut 8's given all their Bitcoin in exchange for 80% of American Bitcoin mining. They've given all their Bitcoin infrastructure, their Bitcoin miners, all that stuff. So that's its own company. That company is going to merge with Griffin, and that's a backdoor maneuver to become publicly traded. So really what's happening to Hut 8, although they'll hold a majority interest in that publicly traded company, Hut 8 themselves will no longer have any revenue from Bitcoin mining. They will not be a Bitcoin miner anymore. And BitDigital is all but erased their Bitcoin mining. They mine somewhere in the 20 plus Bitcoin a month when they last reported, and they're not reporting anymore. And that's a new string that we need to talk about. This is something that all of a sudden we've got a lot of these Bitcoin miners. They were all issuing monthly reports, which was, to me as an investor was extremely useful. I feel like, as I talked about on the top of this, for those of you who weren't here, I think Bitcoin miners are running and hiding from the fact that they're Bitcoin miners right now. It's not playing well in the short term, and they're not getting the price action on their stock that they want. And they also see the shiny object. This is the thing I don't always love. And this may pay off for a lot of companies. We'll see what happens, and we'll see how they execute on it. But the high performance computing AI stuff is to me, that's the new shiny object. They're not, other than one company. No, none of these companies really have any significant revenue. 95% or more of the revenue for the companies that we look at comes from Bitcoin mining. So they are Bitcoin miners. But a lot of them have said, hey, guess what? We're not even going to report our Bitcoin mining anymore. We'll just let you know at the end of the quarter how we did, like other companies, and no more monthly operational updates. So for me, I don't like holding a stock that doesn't give a monthly operational update as a Bitcoin miner. So, and I'll go through the list. So we have already, BitDigital stopped reporting several months ago. TeraWulf stopped reporting several months ago. Hut did not put out a Bitcoin mining monthly operational report this month, April. Now it's May 23rd. The last month they put it out on like the 4th or 5th day of the month. So by April 23rd, they're not putting a report out. So Core Scientific didn't put a report out. They still do put on X, or what was once Twitter. Every day they put what they've done. So at the end of the month, you can figure out what they did. But that's just one piece of information that's in these monthly operational reports. They're not telling you what's going on. And essentially, effectively, what Core Scientific has told us is they had a big fleet of Bitcoin miners. At one point, for years, it was the biggest fleet of Bitcoin miners. And they mined the most Bitcoin for like 2.5 years every single month. But they're not adding to that fleet. They have not added to that fleet. In fact, it's diminishing and diminishing. You can see if we go back in time and look at all these monthly hash rates, you're going to see Core Scientific keeps moving in the wrong direction every single month. And I think that's just because they're retiring machines that don't make money anymore. And they're one of many companies now that is investing. All of their investing is now going into high performance computing and AI. Now, at least in Core Scientific's case, I will say they have a big customer with a multi-billion-dollar contract. Now, the revenue hasn't started to kick in. Still 95% of their revenues from Bitcoin mining. But if you look at their future revenue and cash flows, they're going to become a high performance computing company as long as CoreWeave can remain successful at what they're doing, because, that's their contract. So, that's a concentration of risk problem that, it's old rule. It wasn't a rule of thumb. I don't know if it's still the rule today, but in accounting, you used to have to disclose in your financial statements if you had a concentration of risk, which is doing business 10% or more with any one company, would it be considered a concentration of risk. Now, it depends on what kind of business you're in. Some businesses, that just happens. That's the way they work. But for Core Scientific, it's all their business right now. But at least, like I said, it's giant contracts. you've got TerraWolf. They've been months without reporting, and they don't have big contracts coming in. They have almost no revenue at all from high performance computing. Bit Digital actually does. By 2025, Bit Digital will have more revenue from high performance computing than they will from Bitcoin mining. And we're only going to be able to see that when they put their month or their quarterly 10Qs out, because they're not putting monthly reports out. But like I said, they're winding down their Bitcoin operations and they're winding up their high performance computing. So those two are already off the list. What do you think?
You're killing me, Ice Man. I'm just dying. I was trying to figure out how much. I've almost 3x my money, by the way, Tom. I'm like 2.6. That's what I was thinking about. For my initial investment, I'm at like 2.6.
Very nice. Congratulations. And congratulations to those of you who are making money. And I'll tell you, when you look at I'll show you what's happened in May. This month has been phenomenal for me personally. Now, I had the 2 months before that, April was a train wreck and March was a train wreck. So we had, it's been a mixed bag, and year to date is not good. So this year is not doing what it's supposed to be doing yet.
But I will tell you that I lost a lot of money in stock, but I made it up in crypto.
And that is the greatest argument for diversifying your portfolio right there, right? Had you just gone one way or the other, it's one of the things that, kept me going through, really February and March and April were not great. Yeah. But, I have, and I'll just tell everybody if they don't know, I own the ETFs. I'm not trading the cryptocurrency itself. I'm in one of the ETFs, but that's the same thing. So a good portion of my money is directly in, correlated to Bitcoin, because those ETFs have for all intents and purposes, they are a 1-to-1 with Bitcoin. So, and they're spot ETFs. So obviously they're going to be 1-to-1. So,
crypto, look at XRP. You've been here long enough to know that I own a lot of XRP. Yeah, you don't think that, I don't know that. Like,
George was buying XRP at 30 cents.
Yeah, and
screaming at the top of his lungs about it for, anybody who would listen. And I know some people, joined in and said they did their due diligence and they like it.
No, I was just thinking about, I should be up, and I haven't pulled out any of that money in my miners, by the way, Bitcoin miners. And it hurts me but there is a number that if it gets to it soon, I am pulling it, and I'm doing, I want to be debt free. So I'm waiting for that to get to a certain number and then
take it out, pay off your debt. And
yep. And that was the money I took and invested all in crypto, by the way.
Right. So you're killing it on that.
Yeah. So that's huge to me. So this is the year of getting out of debt.
And Dave is asking, what's going to happen to HUT stock price after the split? I really think HUT is already being priced at, thought of as not really a Bitcoin miner. And until, they had 1 month, it was bizarre. They didn't buy a Bitcoin mining machine for 3 years. Their hash rate did not go. It went up as a result of the merger, when they did their merger of equals, but no new machines at all for over 3 years. And then all of a sudden, 2 months ago, I think it was, maybe last month or 2 months ago, they announced, boom, we just doubled our exahash. So it's like, oh, I guess they're back in the game. And then they started talking about getting to, we're going to get to 25, we're going to get to 50 exahash. Now it's like, we're out. We're spinning that off. It's going to be its own publicly traded company. But that's the way it was being, other than the anomaly of that 1 month where they doubled their exahash. they really have been mining. I mean, look where they're at on this list. Even when they doubled their exahash, it was to get from 46 Bitcoin mined a month in February to 88 in March. So, right, their Bitcoin mining was half the size of Hive, and Hive has just dramatically increased. We're going to go to a couple of press releases for them. So, you know, Hut was quickly becoming the smallest on this list. And then all of a sudden it looked like they said, wait a second, not only are we in, we want to be one of the bigger players. But they've made the decision they're going to spin that off. So I think that Hut has been trading as, I think Hut 8 got duped. And it is what it is. But that merger of equals that nobody liked, right? That on this channel, as we talked about it and did polls about it, nobody thought that was a merger of equals. Nobody liked that deal. And I think the Hut 8 people ended up, the Hut 8 people, the Hut 8 philosophy, and the Bitcoin mining end of this is never what the company they merged with was interested in. They ousted the CEO, the Hut 8 CEO, and inserted their own CEO, and you know, he has a different vision for the company, and so does the board. They envision themselves as an energy company, and that's how I think they've been trading for a long time. So I'm not expecting like a radical change in their stock, but I think what's good for the energy / high performance computing companies, I think those may move somewhat in tandem with the Bitcoin miners. And we're going to see, and it's going to be on a case-by-case basis because announcements, 2024, the companies that talked about we're going to do high-performance computing, just that talk was enough. That helped their stock. They were the winners in 2024. In 2025, it's going to be time to show me the money. So they're going to have to put out press releases. We just got this contract. We just got that contract. We just got this other contract. If they just go all year saying, hey, we're building out infrastructure, and man, when the contracts come in, we're gonna have contracts, that's not gonna cut it this year, in my opinion. And that's where most of these companies are. And most recently, Bitfarms just joined that philosophy. So Bitfarms has made a fundamental change in their business. So I will tell you, I own Bitfarms. I'm not selling it, but I have changed my investment philosophy on Bitfarms. So obviously, this is not financial advice. You guys need to do you and do your own thing and do your own due diligence, please. And also for all the people that, I see a lot of comments that tell me that a lot of people still haven't heard the thing. I got a group of people that yell at me because I say 10 times in every stream, this is volatility. Like, this is the definition of volatility. If you can't handle volatility, don't be in these stocks because you're not going to sleep at night. You're going to buy high. You're going to sell low. So just, you got to, at your core, know we're going to have strange behavior. We're going to have volatile behavior. The Bitcoin miners are worse than the cryptocurrencies are. So I just think that's a very important message for everybody to get. And I think there's still a lot of people in this space that, are reacting on a day-to-day basis, and you'll go nuts. If you do that, these moves are too much, and we're going to look at month to date, year to date, all that kind of stuff, and it'll make you crazy. So spin second serve. Tom said 6 months after having December 2025 March. Now? Question mark. There is a price for dream and hope. So spin second serve. I don't know if you've lost money with the Bitcoin miners. If you have, you're not alone. And, if you believe they're not going to run and it's going to end up a loss, to me, it's not a loss until I sell it. So, and we'll see. I don't know, right? I don't know. I have no crystal ball better than anybody else. For those of you who are familiar with the channel, right, I read the 10Ks and the 10Qs cover to cover. I go through the monthly operational reports. I keep myself in the loop on these. I pay a lot of attention to these. But that's the kind of stuff you do as a long-term investor. If you're a day trader or a very short-term swing trader or somebody who can't handle volatility, it's going to make you nuts, and you will always feel like you've lost. This month I feel great. I mean, my Bitcoin mining portfolio is up like 45% this month. And Bitcoin's at or near its all-time high, right? Yesterday it was at its all-time high. So, that part of my portfolio is doing very well as well. So, you got to diversify. You got to be willing to take the risk that you take, and there are no guarantees. I still think we're going to have big runs out of some of these companies. Some of them I think won't. We already knocked.
Tom, when does that change?
When would my opinion change?
Yes.
Well, I can tell you, I thought it was the first point was yesterday. Yesterday was disturbing action to me. We've had this a couple of times. A couple of the times that Bitcoin hit its all-time high, the Bitcoin miners behaved poorly. And, those days are disturbing because you really feel like, as the Bitcoin miners have already been behaving poorly, when Bitcoin reaches a new all-time high, these things are going to start to run. So that's kind of an earmark. Now, I will tell you, when we look at the May chart, they all ran ahead. They were a precursor. So they all ran big time before Bitcoin ran. And then Bitcoin ran, and we didn't get, yesterday was a day I thought we could have had 10, 15, 20% green days, and we didn't get it at all. And even with the moves they had already made in May, I still think we should have gotten that. So yesterday was a concerning day to me. And no one day is going to concern me. But obviously, if we're at 120,000 and 130,000, and we're still looking at, is Bitfarms going to stay over $1, right? If they haven't broken out sooner than later, right? And certainly at 100, my original target for this bull run was 150,000. I think I raised that about 6 months ago. I said, nah, I think it's going to be more like 175,000. And it could be in between those. It could be, there's a lot of people that think it's going to be a lot higher than that. Some people think we already hit our all-time high. So, a lot of it's going to depend on that. But the companies that continue to perform very well at what they're doing, the companies that are hodling Bitcoin, as Bitcoin gets more valuable, they're going to become more valuable. And they're the big three stocks in this space are Marathon, Riot, and CleanSpark. And they are monstrously shorted. CleanSpark's over 30% shorted. Marathon and Riot are around 25% shorted. For any reasonable sized company, like, that's a pretty epic level of being shorted. So we haven't had a short squeeze. We haven't pushed the shorts out. In fact, I think people doubled down on their short position when Bitcoin hit an all-time high. And I think they're making a mistake. This trade where they go long Bitcoin and short the Bitcoin miners, that's in my opinion not a hedge that's going to pay off for them. I think they're going to get absolutely burned on that, like they have in May, right? And now they're doubling down, but that just means it's only going to get worse, in my opinion. So American Maid's asking, what percentage of the new company, American Bitcoin, will Hut own? So Hut owns 80% of the new company, and the new company is going to own 98% of Griffin. So, do the math. They'll own 78 or 79% of that. And I got to believe, the float is going to be so small, they're going to have to put some shares. They're going to divest, I would think. I don't know that. But, if 80% of the shares of this company are tied up and not even in the float, that's a very small. I'm sorry, it won't be 80%. It'll be 98%, right? Because Griffin's shares are trading on the open market, but, that's only going to be 2% of the new company, plus or minus. Those numbers are not exact.
Wow. 45% is shorting in CleanSpark.
So that's bigger than the number I saw, but that could be true, Mitch.
Wow.
And he's saying that Matt Schultz he tweeted that and said that. So, I have a few websites I go to find the short positions, and they're saying like between 30 and 33. But if Matt Schultz is saying 45%, then, it could be as high as 45%. And, that's going to suppress the price of a stock. To me, I have said for the last year, CleanSpark under $12 is they're just giving shares away. And they haven't been back to $12. They revisited, they got over $11 yesterday, and now they pulled back. Right? If we go look at where they are, they've pulled back to $9.36. So if I go to their chart, right, if we look at the last 2 days, I mean, this is crazy. They hit, I'll go to the close. That's almost 16% move to the downside as Bitcoin hitting its all-time high. And it was really mostly yesterday. You can see just yesterday from the high to the low, right? That was 11% move to the downside. And that's what happened. Somebody shorted the entire Bitcoin universe somewhere between 9:35 a.m. and 9:40 a.m. because when in pre-market and for the first 5 minutes of the market being open yesterday, the Bitcoin miners were going through the roof. And you can see this red candle at one point. See all this above the candle? This was a gigantic green candle at 9:35 in the morning. By 10 in the morning, this was a red candle, and it closed lower, and then it gapped lower today because Bitcoin's down today. So these 2 days of price action here, to me, are ridiculous. I did not buy anything today, but there were two things that I almost bought. And if there's another pullback on Monday, I will add to my position in Hive, and I will add to my position in CleanSpark, because to me, those two stocks are acting the most irrational. And I've got some press releases from Hive I want to go through, because there's a reason I'm feeling better and better about Hive. And I think they're going to pass Bitfarms soon. And I'm still bullish on Bitfarms. They did get themselves up to basically 20 exahash. They're the fifth biggest miner right now. But they came out and said on their conference call a few things that were game changers. Number one, they came out and said no more monthly operational updates. So that's a shift away from Bitcoin mining. They also said, I think I have this open. They said this and they showed it.
He meant to say Tuesday, Larry.
Sorry, did I say the wrong day?
Yeah, Monday we're closed.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
I agree with that. Pick up GameStop before their announcement of buying BTC next week.
See, even GameStop, they're going to move in there, but GameStop is another meme type of a stock. I'm looking for a big company, and it doesn't have to be, ultimately, if it was a Google or a Microsoft or an Apple, that would be an absolute game changer. But there's a lot of other companies, and I'm going to go back to the list and show you a bunch that will be buying Bitcoin for sure, sooner than later.
I got to ask anybody of this one. David said this: I'm not buying into a new company until there is a BTC crash below 30K.
Oh, so you're waiting for a crypto winner.
Well, that's a real bad winner. Let's put it that way. That would be a really bad winner.
Yeah, that's more of an ice age than a crypto winter.
Yeah, it's 74% down.
Well, and 80%, we've had 80% moves to the downside. But from where we're going from here, there's a difference of opinion. If we run up to 200, the chances of running back down to 30 I don't think that's in the cards, but you don't know. And I also think, I think we're out of, I don't think we're out of bull and bear markets, right? Because the market itself has always had bull and bear markets, you know, pullbacks, corrections, etc. Cryptocurrency has those, and I think they will have them on an exaggerated basis because in totality, they're so much smaller than the overall market. But I don't think we're ever going to have another crypto winter. A lot of you might say that's nuts. There's just this time around, the adoption is real. The ETFs aren't a dream, they're real. And by the way, they're the most successful ETFs in the history of all ETFs, and it's not close. It's not close. The BlackRock ETF did in like 6 months what the next best ETF in history did in like 5 years. So, like, the adoption is real. We're seeing adoption at every level. Now in the United States, we're seeing a bill go, it's through the Senate, it's going to the House to have, some clarification and regulation on stable coins. And that's going to be the bridge to all of these banks. I've got an article that talks about this. The banks are looking to get together and create a joint stable coin that they own. So if you think they're not getting into cryptocurrency, they know the handwriting's more than on the wall. It's written in stone at this point. So they're coming in. JP Morgan just announced, and I don't even know what this means. They said they will now let their customers buy Bitcoin, but they're not going to custody it for them. So I don't even know. I don't even understand how to interpret that statement. You still got groups that, you got big pools of money that haven't spent the first dollar on Bitcoin. And you've got a lot of other big pools that have started to dip their toe in the water. And I think you're going to see a lot of consensus. That doesn't mean it's going to go up every day forever. Like I just got through ranting a few minutes ago, there is massive volatility in this space. So we'll get smacked down, at some point, and then everybody will think it's all over. Just like they did, right? We spent 4 months going sideways and down. And, we started to get to polls that were near 50-50 on, is the bull market over? And then, bam, we went from 74,000 to 112,000. So.
It's very telling to see the front page of this Bitfarms report, by the way.
The North American Energy Compute Infrastructure Company.
It doesn't say anything about Canada.
It's that you took away a different thing that I did. There's two telling things. North America.
Right.
And it doesn't say anything about Bitcoin.
Right, yeah.
I mean, 99% of their revenue is from Bitcoin.
They're running. And I think this is because whoever they hired, the marketing consultant person, first of all, they're complete and utter idiots. This logo looks like crap.
Yeah, they rebranded, changed it from one bad logo to another. And people can't make logos anymore. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, look at Ben. Go down. Did you see the picture of Ben?
I think it's up here. There you go.
Oh my goodness.
Is that not instilling confidence in you, George?
No.
I like Ben. I think he's a super smart guy. I got a chance to talk to him on screen and off, and I think he's a nice guy. I think he's a super smart guy. I think he's outstanding at running a Bitcoin mining fleet, but that's not his role anymore. Now all of a sudden he's the CEO, and all of a sudden they've pivoted completely away. I want to show you a couple of things in this real quick. So here you go. This is their investor presentation that came out with their financial results. $5.2 trillion investment into data centers. So they're talking about, the TAM, the total addressable market in this HPC AI is huge. It dwarfs they're thinking the investment in Bitcoin mining. So this is what a lot of the Bitcoin miners are looking at. And that's why I call it the shiny object syndrome, right? Because they just spent A lot of these companies just spent 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years building out their infrastructure and becoming true vertically integrated, efficient companies doing one thing. And now all of a sudden, now that they're finally doing a good job at that, they want to stop and do something else. So I understand diversifying. So if you want to do both, I like what I like, and that's why I sold the biggest portion of the money when I sold my MicroStrategy went into Iron and Hive. I did also put some in Riot, but to a much lesser extent. I like what those companies are doing. Hive is growing their exahash, and we'll look at those press releases, but they're looking to quadruple their exahash and become a real player in this. They've been hanging around. What they did quietly while they were hanging around is swap out every single machine in their fleet so they have an efficient fleet. Now they're growing their fleet, and they're growing it fast. They've already paid for a lot of it. You're going to see jumps in their exahash, and there's 2 press releases I'm going to show you where we're already seeing big jumps. But to get back to Bitfarms, what disturbs me on Bitfarms is this page, the building blocks of high performance computing. So they have below the line and above the line. Above the line, these are the things they hope to do going forward. Below the line, one-time process completed. Check mark. Complete mining expansion. That's a green check-marked box, i.e., they're done. And that's not me guessing. They said so on the conference call. They do not plan on, other than, they've got some machines still coming in, the last of their purchases. They're not allocating their resources to increase their Bitcoin mining. So they're going to end up somewhere just about 20 exahash. So that's a nice size Bitcoin company, but come next halving, if they haven't addressed updating their fleet or growing their fleet, they're going to become obsolete. And they said they're managing their Bitcoin because they're cash flow positive on mining Bitcoin. They're using that cash flow to fund growth in their high performance computing infrastructure. So that is the exact same thing Iron is doing, but Iron, I'll go to Iron. Iron got themselves, they're getting themselves to 50 exahash. And they got there fast. And they got there just exactly the way in the time frame they said they were going to get there. They hit their benchmarks. This was clockwork. Their cost per coin is low. They throw off a lot of money. This company makes a profit from scratch, including not just EBITDA, including depreciation and everything. This is a profitable company. These guys are doing it, but my issue with them, we're going to see if this pays off. They sell 100% of all the Bitcoin they mine, take all those proceeds. Obviously, they pay for their direct costs, they pay for their indirect costs, but they have a lot left over after that, and they're selling all their Bitcoin to put it into infrastructure for high-performance computing. So this is another company that's really leaning into the high-performance computing. TeraWulf has dedicated 500 of their 750 megawatts to high-performance computing. So we've got a lot of these companies that are really, really, really pushing the high-performance / AI data center narrative versus the Bitcoin mining narrative. And some of them are pushing it to the extent where they're not even going to report their Bitcoin results anymore, because even if they're good, it just gives the perception that they're a Bitcoin miner. And I think that they believe right now, today, that's a bad thing for their stock. That's what it looks like to me. So that's the difference between an Iron, where they're running themselves up to 50 exahash by June 30th, they said, and Bitfarms. So for me with Bitfarms, I still think they're going to participate in the run. I still think they've got a good business model. I think they've got a good leader. I know they have all kinds of other problems, but I think they're going to their stock, I believe, is going to participate in the run up. But what I have changed my mind on is that used to be one of my highest level conviction stocks that I owned, but they have changed their philosophy as a company. So
Tom, who's moved into your number one now?
CleanSpark.
Yeah.
CleanSpark is my number one conviction stock right now. And not to sound like chalk, as they say, but I'm kind of CleanSpark, Riot, Marathon, Iron. Those are my top 4 right now. Hive, I think, is the most undervalued Bitcoin miner. So I think they're going to have a run when they haven't gotten their turn, and I'll show you this. They're lagging so far behind everybody else. And now that they're finally doing what they've been talking about, I think they're going to get their run. So that's why if we get a dip from here, I will add. And I did just add when I sold my MicroStrategy. Like I said, I bought Iron, I bought Hive, and then I bought a little bit of Riot. So all 3 of those have outperformed MicroStrategy considerably over the last month. Now, that's just 1 month. To be fair, MicroStrategy has outperformed all 3 of those companies over the last 30 months, and it's not close. But that's one of the reasons I felt like the tides were going to switch, because these are MicroStrategy's run so far ahead, and these stocks are so far behind that I felt like I was going to get a bigger return at these low numbers. I just, looking at some of these companies at the prices they were at, Hive retested their lows from the bottom of the crypto winter last month. So yes, I was a buyer. And they're still not too far off of their absolute low, all-time low from the crypto winter. So, like, if you think you missed it, I don't think you have. That's my personal opinion. Hive under $2. I mean, let's go to Hive's chart. Let's go to Hive. So this red line right here was their all-time low from the bottom of in 2022 after the FTX situation, where they crashed down to, right? If I go back, right, that was a crash. And they quickly recovered and never got anywhere near this ever again. Now all of a sudden, in April, and April 8th was the day I called. That's the day I made my big April 8th and April 22nd. Now, I made my trade on April 23rd because MicroStrategy didn't get to break even for me until April 23rd. But my purchases I did on April 22nd and April 8th and to me, they were just like giant blinking lights. And we were talked about them in real time at the time. It's like, George, on this day right here, where Hive got below, it closed. This is the only day it did so. It closed below its low from the bottom of the crypto winter. So with Bitcoin at 88,000, Hive was lower than it was when Bitcoin was at 15,500.
That's amazing.
It's right. It's ludicrous. It's ludicrous. So I think there's so much upside to this stock. Just $2.82 was like a pretty good floor. Like, I had a line there. They did dip below that from time to time, but you can see that held a support here. And I think that's a line, that I don't think this is going to be resistance. That's the next line, but I think it's going to run to this line. And that's just the beginning, because if you look at this stock, just a few months before that, in November, this was a $5.54 stock. So if this gets back to where it was in November, and Bitcoin is higher than it was in November, and Hive has doubled its exahash, and it needs to go up 182% just to get back to where it was when those two things were true. So this stock's out of balance. It just is. Now, maybe it'll stay that way forever. Right? There are no guarantees in the stock market, but my guess is, and I'll go to the press releases next right now and show them while we're talking about Hive, because they have kicked it into gear. So first we'll look at...
Tom, just so you know, I've never done this, but I couldn't take Iceman anymore, and I suspended him for a day.
I was not responding. He's just trying to...
I know, it just, so he'll probably sign on another account. So just wait, guys.
For those of you who are berating or belittling us in the chat, I don't even look at it. So you're just wasting your time and effort. I do read the chat, but if you're telling me I'm an idiot, then
it's like, dude, give it a rest. Really?
I can get this kind of abuse at home. I don't need to go online for this. So
Literally.
I mean, and thank you for all the people that are putting thoughtful comments in the chat, because we also have a great conversation going on for the most part. So that is much appreciated. And thank you to all the members as well. And if you guys haven't, if you could please hit the thumbs up or the like button. We're going for 100 likes. We had one stream, and that was another. There were like 10 different things that put together just were screaming to me that this is the bottom. And we had a live stream that didn't get 100 likes. That was while we were live. That was the first one in 3 years. So it was the least views we've had. It was the least likes we've had. And we've kind of jumped back to where we were prior to that. So I think things are on the mend. Bitcoin's at a new all-time high, but retail still really hasn't moved in. You're going to see it's the institutions that have been driving this up. So I don't want to sidetrack my own sidetrack, but I want to get to what the ETFs have done. I'm going to go to Hive first, and then I want to go do that, because if you think that we don't have momentum going, this is going to blow you away. So before I go to these press releases, my point is, just to get back to where we were in November, that's 183% move to the upside for Hive. But oh, by the way, to get back to where we were, this is in the middle of the crypto winter, right? This trading range here was their lows in the crypto winter. If we go back to where this stock was in the last cycle, I mean, I'm not even going to forget this. Let's say we all agree this is a pipe dream. This was a $28 stock. That's 1,354% upside. So, okay, let's say that's just that's gone. And I'm not saying it is, but let's just, for the sake of argument, let's say that's, we're certainly not expecting that. That's unrealistic to be expecting or demanding that. If you jump all the way down to here, that's still a 500% increase to this little peak we got somewhere in the crypto winter. We had multiple peaks here. This is a 286% move to the upside. These were all dead in the middle of the crypto winter when Bitcoin was at, $15 or $20 or $25,000. We just hit 112,000. If Bitcoin gets to 150 or 175, or a lot of people think it's going to get to over 200. If it gets to those numbers, and Hive does, so now I'm going to go show you what Hive is doing. So this came out on May 14th, and I'm going to detour. This is a valuable detour. If we look at Hive, if I highlight Hive, you're going to see in February they were at 6.2 exahash. In March they were at 6.4 exahash. In April, they were at 7.3 exahash, so they were climbing slowly, almost 1 exahash in April, and then they put this out. So they were hanging out at 6. If I go backwards, you can see, like, January, they were at 6 exahash. December of last year, they were at 6 exahash. This is kind of where they plateaued. So from that point, on May 14th, they announced that they just surpassed 8 exahash. So this was good news. There's more details in here that I'll get to, but already 1 week later, they're at 9.5 exahash. So they've grown more in the last week and a half than they did in like a 3-year period. Now, they did swap out their whole fleet to have a much more efficient fleet, but the size of their fleet really didn't grow. Now they're growing. And what they told us is, so now they just went from 7 to 8 to 9.5, all in rapid fire succession. And they're saying, scheduled for completion this summer, 11.5 exahash to 18 exahash. So then Hive has further deposits and options to purchase in place for Bitcoin miner ASICs to reach a target of 25 exahash in 2025. That's this year. So let's say they don't. Let's say they get to, this 18. Well, to run from, 6 to 18 in 1 year, triple their exahash, drastically increase the efficiency of their exahash. Bitcoin, has gone up dramatically. This is a formula. There's no line of reasoning for this stock to be trading where it's trading. And if we go look, so these numbers aren't perfect. Yahoo is not totally perfect in all their numbers, but just to take a look, come on now. So market cap, well, we didn't have to go here to look at that. Their market cap, it looks like it's around $356 million. So let's see if they say what their book value is, because I think they're trading at or maybe even below book value. So they're getting no premium off in any way, shape, or form. I mean, this is just a stock that's oversold beyond belief. Price book, 0.83. Their market cap's less than their book value. I mean, it's madness. And this is a company that just shifted gears into ultra high growth mode with Bitcoin at its all-time high. So that is why I feel like there's a brighter future ahead for Hive in the next 12 to 18 months than maybe there is for MicroStrategy, even if MicroStrategy does well, which they very well may. I'm not saying that they're not going to. They may. Up till now, they're the winner. So, I have to always caveat that, even though I think the Bitcoin miners are going to do better from here forward, it's been no contest. MicroStrategy, from the lows of 2022 until now, MicroStrategy is way ahead of every single Bitcoin miner, and it's not close. But that's almost an argument, one of my arguments as to why I feel like it's time to switch out of one into the other. So we'll get rid of this poll. And let's see what you guys think about this company. So just a straight up yes or no. Is Hive a buy? Just based on what we just looked at and what we just talked about, are they a buy, or is that just something you would just stay clear of?
Well, I bought them, so.
All right. We got to get to the charts. We still didn't look at what happened, so I want to get to that right now.
Tom, how much longer can they suppress this? Everybody's asking about the run.
Every time we try and guess a number, we're wrong, right? I never would have guessed they could have suppressed the Bitcoin miners with Bitcoin at 110,000 plus. So this to me, but it's the oldest quote in the book. The market can remain irrational for longer than you can remain solvent. So
we probably shouldn't say dates.
Has been wrong. So I'm O for whatever. Having said that, I still think, the stocks that I own, I think are going to have a big run. It's just how patient. And the other thing, and I'm not a big Warren Buffett fan, to be brutally honest. But he has a few catchy quotes that he's said over time that are very basic, but they're very insightful. And one of them is that the market is a mechanism that takes money from the impatient and gives it to the patient. And I think we're really, really seeing that with the Bitcoin miners. Anybody that doesn't have serious conviction and long-term patience to buy and hold these has probably already bought high and sold low. We know we've had capitulation. And when we get to the monthly, you're going to see I think we've clearly already turned around. But this week, to me, was very disappointing. Other than iron, unfortunately, I just bought a bunch of iron. So iron, Bitcoin was up 4% this week when all was said and done. It got even higher than that. It got to a new all-time high yesterday. But this week was a very good week for Bitcoin. It was not a good week. It was a bad week for the Bitcoin miners, with the exception of iron, which was up 8%. So I think the market really likes the fact that iron's getting to 50 exahash. They like that they're diversifying their revenue streams without compromising their original revenue stream. And they like the fact that their energy cost is the lowest out of all these Bitcoin miners, at or near the lowest. And they make money from Gap. So even in the first quarter, which was a rough quarter for most of the other companies, they had a profit from Gap. So I think iron will continue to run. I don't think the run is over. And this week they just beat everybody else. But Cypher down 10%. Marathon down 9%. Bitfarms 9%. Riot 7%. I mean, these are all bad moves. So you can see why I was thinking, in a week where Bitcoin hit a new all-time high and was up 4%, I could have bought some Hive down 5%. To me, that was on the verge of a buying opportunity. I didn't do it. So we'll see if I missed it. If it runs up from here, so be it. I've, made more purchases than I ever thought I would to begin with. So, I can't cry in my soup if I missed a buying
You got
opportunity.
8 minutes, Tom, just so you know.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I got a hard deadline today. So let's get through our stuff. So this is this week. This was last week. So this is how fast things can change. It was euphoria last week. Bitcoin was up 1%. We had Cypher up 30, TeraWolf up 29%, Hut up 23%. So if we put all the month of May together, and we're now 23, we got 1 week left in May. So even with this bad week, and this was a bad week, and yesterday's price action, to me, was one of the worst price action days for the Bitcoin miners, of in recent history. But even with that said, Bitcoin's up 15% this month, which is a phenomenal month, right? New all-time high. BitDeer's up 51%. Iron's up 49%. This is just in May. So for those of you, saying, all you're going to do is ever lose money, like I added to my position and then, and I'm lucky because I added twice before this thing made this move. So, that's a 49% move to the upside. And that's the power of dollar cost averaging. And trust me, I'm still red on some of these companies. So, none of this is ever like bragging. I'm red on just as many Bitcoin mining stocks as I'm green on. The only stock I'm up huge on is CleanSpark. At one point, I was up huge on Bitfarms, but they have pulled back so dramatically that, and we'll look at that I'm red on Bitfarms. I'm red on Marathon. I'm red on Riot.
Wow.
So,
it makes me feel a little better, though. I ain't gonna lie.
It's a part of the journey. And I know if I was a swing trader and I did it perfectly, I could have made 10 times as much money, but I'm not a swing trader and I can't predict these perfectly. I try to dollar cost average in at what I think are the right times. So, it is what it is. But this is what I'm saying. Despite the fact that this week was a little discouraging, this month has been spectacular. Now, CleanSpark is on par with Bitcoin. That's not great, right? These should be outperforming Bitcoin. Marathon is underperforming Bitcoin, and Bitfarms is in last place. So if we go year to date, you're going to see there's only one Bitcoin miner that's even in the green year to date, and that is CleanSpark. So CleanSpark technically is the number one performing Bitcoin miner of the year 2025 at a whopping 2% increase. Bitcoin is up 16%. So Bitcoin's having another great year. 2023 was a great year. 2024 was a great year. Both of those years, it was up more than 100%. I think we have a shot at that this year. But even if it's up 60, 70, 80% this year, that's going to be after back-to-back years of up over 100%. That will be a phenomenal return. These Bitcoin miners need to turn around, catch up, and pass Bitcoin. This is the year, I believe. Last year, we got mixed results and underperformance from Bitcoin miners in 2024. In 2023, we got phenomenal results from Bitcoin miners. So I think it's time to flip the switch. I think some of these Bitcoin miners are going to have great years. I do think the ones that are leaning into AI, unless they can show contracts, I think they're going to have tough years. So there's a bunch of these companies, particularly the ones that have stopped doing monthly operational reports. Now we get no information on their Bitcoin mining. And if there's no press releases that they've got any contracts on their high performance computing, remember, most of these companies are somewhere at or near zero contracts on the high performance computing side, despite the massive amount they've allocated to building it out. Now, there is a long time frame on this to build out this infrastructure, get the machines up and running, and get the revenue come in. Takes a long time. So there's that part of it too. But I think the market understands that. And if the contracts start coming in, despite the fact that the revenue could lag a year behind or 18 months behind, I think they'll get rewarded for the contracts. But for those companies who aren't going to report their Bitcoin and don't report any big news on, if all their news is we're growing our infrastructure, that news is no good anymore. Now it has to be we're getting contracts. That's my opinion. So that's where I think you're going to see the winners and the losers.
Two minutes.
Is Hive a buy? This was almost a 50-50. I hate to cut out early. I'm sorry I have to cut out early. I have an obligation that I cannot get out of this evening. So
we can talk about Pizza Day that was yesterday.
Oh, let's hit that, because this was just absolutely staggering to me.
Pizza.
What you didn't know about this person, the Bitcoin Pizza Day legend, when Laszlo purchased 2 large Papa John's pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin on May 22nd, 2010. Can you imagine? He got 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. That is now worth, they say over $1 billion. That is now worth $1.1 billion at today's price. But it's worse than that for him, because they go on to say in that time frame, he spent nearly 100,000 Bitcoin on other items, a sum worth of $8.6 billion. So he probably got somewhere around $200 or $300 worth of stuff for what today would be worth $8.6 billion. They don't go on to say if this guy holds any Bitcoin, maybe he still has 100,000. And he's
a feeling he has a ton.
Right. If he's got another 100,000, then I don't feel bad for him. If this was his Bitcoin, then, I don't know how you could sleep at night ever again. But that's a crazy, and everybody knows the pizza story, but it wasn't just those 10,000. He spent 100,000 Bitcoin.
So sorry, Michael. That's not good.
I mean, that's the matter. Next Friday we'll do one of our round robin tournaments and see who everybody thinks the best Bitcoin miner is from an investment standpoint. I got to leave you on this note, but so it's a mixed bag. That's why I said kind of good news, bad news. This was a down day for Bitcoin. It was red across the board for Bitcoin miners. It was a rough week for the Bitcoin miners, but we hit a new all-time high for Bitcoin. And ultimately, this is what's going to drive the long-term success. So, I keep rooting for Bitcoin, and however long it takes the Bitcoin miners to catch up, I do believe they will catch up. So that's my thought for whatever it's worth. George, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, just have fun.
Oh, thank you.
Keep it real, guys.
Thank you, everybody. You can smash the like button on the way out. We actually didn't get to 100 likes, believe it or not. So if you could smash the like button on the way out, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to all the members. Thanks to all the subscribers. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. And to the members, we will see you guys on Tuesday when the market closes.